They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are mourn, just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Oh, sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogueways, we are in for a treat as we dive into all of our favorite topics with someone who was plucked from the ether for a special life path to help unveil the truth of our universe. He has written Master of Reality and experienced extra-dimensional psychic phenomenon and more while unraveling the aspects of existence that boggle the mind of many. From aliens to UFOs to time travel, Mark Fiorentino is here to blow the lid off of conventional physics. Mark, how are you doing? And welcome back to Rogueways.
I'm doing fine, thank you, Lindsay. It's good to be back, and we're going to have some fun tonight talking about all kinds of interesting topics.
I'm so excited. I've read all of Master of Reality, and I loved it. I loved our last conversation. If anyone wasn't there for that, wants to go after this show and check it out, it is worth your time. Mark has nothing but amazing insights to share on truly things that just blow your mind and blow the lid off of what you thought was going on here from a scientific perspective. But you also have these, other paranormal experiences as well, which is really cool. But before we get into all that, I just like to thank every single person out there who is listening, watching, sharing, subscribing, liking, tipping on the channel, super chatting over on YouTube, or any other way that you support the show. Love you so much. Thank you so much for that support. And of course, you can always go support the show also by joining rogue.locals.com, where we've got the best community online. You can come chat with us all at t.me/roguewayschat. That's the Telegram channel. And you can always go to rogueways.org and find more. There's all kinds of healing gifts, spiritual support and guidance, and all sorts of fun things for you. So back to you, Mark, with the pointless question of the episode. If you were a weather event or a type of climate, what would you be and why?
I guess I would be somewhere around the equator on a hot, steamy kind of a tropical island kind of thing. That's kind of where I'd like to be at whenever I can be mentally, just try to chill out. It's been a long process with a lot of suffering involved when I was not like that. So I would prefer to try to get back to that again, kind of be a warm southern climate of some sort. Occasionally, maybe a hurricane or something blows through, but something like that, I guess, would be good.
I love it. I was seeing that for you, and then I was like, oh, I'm psychic. And then I was like, wait, but he's also wearing a shirt with palm trees, so it's probably a good guess either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem like that sunny kind of guy who's had plenty of hurricanes in life and therefore knows the value of the sunny, calm, beautiful places and feelings.
Yeah, I've seen some real storms in my life. Definitely getting to this point has not been easy. But I'm happy to be here now. I'm at much more peace, although I feel a lot of weight having to do with all this book and what's in the book and what I still have to do. It weighs on me heavily.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I try to just say, hey, I'm honored to have this mission assigned to me, and I'm going to do the best I can.
You really were chosen for this, and you've done a fantastic job. Again, if anyone reads Master of Reality, you really lay it out very clearly exactly what, physics is actually about, how we can actually manage time travel, space travel, and anti-gravitics and all of this, and you explain it very clearly, and especially for people of a scientific mind, but even for people who don't. You have kind of both things going on in the book at once, and it's really nice. It reminds me a lot of how Carl Sagan and other science writers who were really good at sharing this with the public and the layperson who is not a physicist but wants to understand. And so you do a great job of that. And I know you've made progress on bringing that to people in other ways as well. What's been going on since last we talked?
Well, yeah, in the book, I talk about, I got the idea or the theory, unified field theory solution, but it was informally talked about in the book. So I went and formally wrote up a research paper and uploaded it to ResearchGate. And I take the same sort of path that way. I explain the heck out of the math that's in there. The last 5 pages of math, there's 45 pages of explanation as to what it really means, because math is all about the language of that explains how our physical reality works. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So it's up to the scientist, the philosopher in my case, to explain exactly the meaning of the math. Then it makes so much sense. It's shocking.
It is.
When you get it, oh, of course. That explains everything. And that's what I tried to do. I spent many months writing that paper. It took like the book, it took 4 years. I kept rewriting it because I wanted it to have the effect, the exact effect that you noticed, that it's common sense, it's clear, it's very thoroughly explained, and it's for the layman. For the most part, there's a few sections that are a little technical, but I put a little marker in there. You could skip that if you want, but there are a little bit for the physicists, but 90-something% of the book is just for the layman so that they understand how reality physically works.
Yes. Well, and if you were to recap that, study somehow for the people here who maybe didn't catch our previous chat, how would you describe the type of, knowledge you stumbled upon and the implications of it?
Well, it happened in a series of realizations at the end of my career, my working career, where I just, like everybody else, did a job to make the money to pay the bills. And while I was at that job, there were times where I had times to think, and I had documents on my wall, like the particle interaction model, which the study of physics was always just a hobby. I didn't really think that I would unravel so many mysteries. But when they started to happen, like the time at work when I realized how mass was created by recognizing a pattern, a subtle embedding in the particle model of quantum mechanics, it says, oh, particles generate mass by their motion through the ether. If they accelerate, they generate mass, and because it causes a contraction as they go through this continuous quasi-elastic solid. And so that's how I realized it when I said, oh, I know this is true because the only particle that doesn't generate mass is the photon. It travels in a straight line and doesn't accelerate. And that's the only one that's massless. And when I realized that, I says, all of it now makes sense. And that's what started me on the idea I should probably write a book after I retire. Give me something to do, and I got some good ideas, and it just spawned more and more about how gravity works, and eventually that led to anti-gravity theory. Because if I know that gravity is a contraction of space, then I know that anti-gravity has to be an expansion. It's very simple, straightforward logic. I never throw any, curveballs at anybody in this theory. Everything fits together and makes sense. And so that's how it, kind of gradually came about the last 10 working years of my life. Ideas kept popping in my head. I kept making notes. And then when I retired, I just put the whole thing together and here we are. We're living the dream.
It's akin to what some people would call channeling or downloading, how you describe it, just appearing in your head and you're going, wow, that makes so much sense, actually.
That's interesting you brought that up because some of this, I am sure, comes from help from the other side. I don't think that there's anybody that uses inspiration that just generates it solely from their own consciousness. I believe there is, St. Thomas Aquinas called it infusion, which is another fancy word for channeling, where you get direct information, knowledge from the other side. That's higher than just intellectually thinking things out. And that's the highest form of knowledge, is getting a direct download from the other side. And so there's, I'm sure, some special process in which, if you concentrate, maybe especially with prayer and such, that you'll get answers. You just need to learn to listen. And I would just kept my mind open and said, I believe in this, I know this works, and I listened and trusted my intuition. So you're right.
It's a really beautiful experience to have. It's really awesome to hear about, because we all know that then we have that connection too, and we can go play with that, like you just said. But it's interesting too, because all of the greatest minds that we know of talk about the exact same thing, right? They talk about it coming to them in a flash, or sometimes literally being delivered to them by other beings. Tesla, all these amazing minds say the same thing. You're in good company. If you want
to know how something works, why don't you ask the creator of something? That's what I always did when I was a troubleshooter at IBM. Something broke down on the line, I would go to the person who created that electronic card assembly or software program. I said, explain to me how this works. Once you completely understand it, then you know how to solve the problem. And that's exactly what I did with the unified field theory problem. I troubleshot it, and I wasn't afraid to ask the creator or find a way to communicate and get the information I did. So that's a lot of the spiritual stuff that also comes into play, which I don't really talk too much about in this book I wrote now, but in the next one, I'm going over that big time, because it was a big part of my discoveries.
Yeah, I want to hear all about that. I'm very excited to hear more about that this time, because we didn't get into it last time. But I do want to first go back, and you had said this was just a hobby for you, and that you were just kind of in your free time and extra time sort of thought about it and asked yourself these questions. But you do have a background of, you're an intelligent person, you're have a scientific mind and mathematical mind and this sort of background. So it's not like you were just coming from nowhere. But I still think, isn't it likely or possible that because it was sort of just a hobby, you weren't as indoctrinated into, what it's supposed to be true and how it has to be, and so your mind was more open to just ask and truly just wonder instead of.
That is a right? That is a very clever observation, because I went over that point many times. If I had been trained as an actual physicist, they would not have allowed me to go this path. I followed Einstein's path, which has been abandoned by mainstream physicists. They go the quantum mechanics route. And I can tell you story after story where, physicists will basically, when people have questions like, well, how does particles move? What is the method, the mechanics? They will be told that, shut up and calculate. We don't really talk about, particles don't really move. They just hop from place to place, and that respect some sort of laws of probability and such. They don't like to talk about things being physical and real anymore. So you're right. If I had been trained, and that's part of what I feel is the life plan, the life setup. Is in order to pull this off, you can't be trained as a physicist, because they'll talk you out of it. And they would. My theory is a classical field theory. That's been pretty much abandoned. And that's like blasphemy to physicists in this time. They do not like that. And they get mad. I've been banned from physics websites for talking about this stuff or trying to raise questions and so forth. They don't want to talk about alternate theories, only what's in the accepted textbooks. So basically, I guess you could say I'm really trying to liberate physicists of this time from their outdated philosophical doctrine. Thanks to the many false doctrines stemming from quantum theory interpretations, the physicists in this time have lost their grip on reality. And this is about bringing them back to where things were back in the year 1905 and getting back on the right path. They diverged, they split off at that point in time because of an experiment that happened. And Einstein himself, actually, his theory of special relativity. That's a long story. It's all described in the book. But it's time to bring everybody back home so we can finish the job, so that we can evolve. This is about evolution. This is about mankind generating the technology they need so that we'll be safe for the rest of our time here on Earth. And when it's time to go, we'll be able to do that with the technology I describe in my book.
Agreed. It's pretty, and I love, like you said too, it's so simple, it's so direct, and it's so obvious then when you see it. And I just think everyone will love reading about that if they grab this book. I'm going to say hello to some people in the chat and invite you guys, Johnny, Travis, Alex, Mooney, thank you so much for the tip. And Lindsay Smith, we've got 7-Eleven Lucas, Firelocker, David Hudson, Sue Finelli, Lacey Mariposa, Mojo Shop, Julianne Ferguson, and more who haven't said hi yet. And if any of you guys want to jump in and ask a question at any time, feel free, and we're going to try to be as responsive to that as we can as well. But Mark, I wanted to ask you too, and then I want to hear the stories, but I wanted to ask you, what about people who are attached to that quantum mechanics and quantum physics we've been told means things such as we help create reality by our observation and, our intention and those types of things that I think a lot of people in the spiritual community, the New Age community, or maybe this community, we want to hold on to that, right? Is that all out the window with the things you see and explain?
Yeah, there is an attachment to the idea that consciousness, it's a tricky business right here.
It is.
So let's get into that because it is relevant. It is important to talk about. I believe in a connectedness, and our consciousness is connected to everything but when we're born and we're in the body, in the physical body, we're kind of like somewhat disconnected unless we do things like yoga and meditation and stuff to make that connection. But what I would like to say about in physics, some of the guys say, consciousness is required or affects the thing that's being measured. Well, and there's always been the measurement problem. And the problem, what's affecting the measurements really is that if you want to see something, you have to interact with it. Let's say you want to see an electron or something. You have to bounce photons off of it, get them back, and then read where, the location or the velocity of the particle. Well, when you do that, you affect the particle. You change its path, you change its energy state. And they're confusing that with our consciousness and intention creating the reading that they get, because it requires us to, observe. But Einstein didn't like that, and I kind of agree with them in that they're saying that things exist because we observed them, and they don't exist, Schrodinger's cat, when you don't observe them. And so they've taken this literally and run with it to the point where it just doesn't make sense. The whole Schrodinger's cat thing was developed to show how ridiculous quantum mechanics is. If you're not looking at it, the cat in the box is not either alive or dead, both at the same time, but it is either alive or dead. But you won't know until you observe it. What they want to say is, until you observe it, it's in neither state. So, yeah, consciousness plays a role in the whole thing. We have to interpret what we see, but we have to interpret it right. And where quantum mechanics breaks down is in the interpretation. They have so many now, I can't keep track of them all. They all can't be right. And the odds are when you have multiple versions, none of them are right. And they can't agree on that. And that's kind of an embarrassment to the physicists that they can't even agree on the explanation for reality. So Yeah, I just don't think that it, it, it's kind of, we're trapped in the illusion, and things appear to be random and appear that, that we're affecting them via our consciousness, when really we're involved in a realm that is God created, and that it's a deterministic system, even though it appears not to be. It really is. So in that sense, there is a connection to everything, and that God mind that I think we're all living in. So we're now going beyond our physical reality, because it's just a subset of the greater reality from the creator. So, and I get a lot of that information from listening to NDEs. Near-death
Yeah.
experiences have a lot to say about this question we're talking about. And there's room to fit everything in that makes sense, but we'd have to subsume quantum mechanics at some point.
Yeah, I actually really love this because I love to poke holes in things, especially when we're attached to them. I love to question things, especially when we haven't questioned them. So I'm in love with it. Thank you, Dakota, in the chat for the tip. Very gracious. Nice to see you here tonight. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any. We want to answer questions as we get them. But as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking like it's fabulous enough, mystical enough, beautiful enough that we live in the mind of God, right? It's very hermetic, actually. And even people who are very attached to that idea that we're creating our reality with our consciousness, or however you want to think of that, the consciousness aspect still has room to grow and to be understood in similar ways as you may have understood your sort of quantum mechanics thing that you want to hold on to, right? Like the ether itself is a bit mystical and
The
a
ether
bit
itself,
unknown.
it's an eternal thing, and it's a part, everything. I'll give you a quote from a near-death experiencer who is talking about what we're talking about, because God has given messages to bring back to us through many of these NDE people. And I'm talking about Father Rick Wendell, a Catholic priest who had a near-death experience and became a priest after that. He was a regular guy before the near-death experience, but after that, he saw the light, quite literally. And he says there's really only one commandment for man: love one another. And if you think about it, if we could do that, it would fix every problem here on earth.
That's true.
But so far we haven't been able to do that. It's no easy task, but it could be done. Hopefully we'll get to that someday. So what I'm saying about what they've said is that Father Rick had experienced God, and God explained this situation to him, the physical reality. He says, all of this three-dimensional world is within God. There is nothing outside of God. Everything within this physical universe has to correspond to laws, and God set those laws. They are immutable as God is immutable. None of this, what we see and experience, is an accident. It is intentioned by God. And I use that word a lot in my book, The Power of Intention, because that's where everything comes from. And at one point, this universe was created, and God is constantly creating universes. This is something that other NDEers have seen, and others, even in my book, who saw the pattern, this particular thing here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to turn it on. This doesn't cooperate anymore. Well, you can see it.
It's very beautiful.
It's probably not plugged in, that's why. That was seen by an NDEer as well. And I was seeking that through a series of thoughts that guided me to looking at NDEs to find the signature of God, which is a dynamical geometry that explains how the quarks move inside of neutrons and protons. So I wasn't afraid to go to the spiritual realm, because I know it exists. I accept it. I've had many personal experiences, like some of which we'll probably talk about tonight, starting in my youth around the age of 19 and coming forward, where I've had direct experiences with my guardian angels and such. So I can talk from personal experience that there is an afterlife. People should know that now. There is a God. There is a Jesus, a Buddha, you name it. The people who have helped us here on earth, the spiritual guides and so forth, they're still alive. They're all there and they're helping us on this other side. And I mean, everybody who's watching, including you, all the people on earth have these spirit guides that are assisting. If you realize that and accept that and be open, then all of a sudden they can help you more and more achieve your goals.
Directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in ways you'll be like, oh, wow, thank you.
Yeah, the greatest problem for mankind, individuals, is they're so closed off and so mesmerized by the material world. They become so disconnected that they're just stumbling around in the dark trying to, get this or get that thing or achieve this or whatever, get more money, get more power, whatever. And they lose their connection to God and to their true path. And you could waste a whole lifetime in the material world. I mean, the other side gets there, receives you and says, well, here's where you could have done better. You get a life review and, no harm done. We'll try it again next time. But there is the opportunity, if you're open to it, to have a first best destiny this go around right now. That's what's important. That's what we all should be trying to get to. That's what I'm finally getting to at this point, late in my life. Better late than never.
Well, it sounds like you've been getting there all along, actually, and that, it was all part of the past. So I'd love for you to share with us some of those early experiences that really helped form your spiritual understanding.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's connect the dots from what I'm saying. I'll back it up with events that you could see a pattern in. It starts off with I decide as a kid, 19 years old, I'm enjoying my community college experience. I have a professor Steve Goldman, who's talking about this really cool place called Casadega. That's a place here in Florida. It's the spiritualist capital of North America. And it's a town loaded with psychics. And I said, man, this sounds like fun. I'm going to go get my fortune told. And so me and a bunch of the guys went down there one October day, and it was blustery and a little bit cool and rainy. And it was a perfect day to go down to the spooky town of Casadega. And we went there, and I had a normal reading. The other guy that was with me had a normal reading. His name was Jeff Jones. And everything was great. I didn't expect anything unusual to happen. And it didn't, not in my reading, but it happened afterwards. So after we got out of Casadega, and then we all drove up to Daytona Beach, which was the whole real mission of that party at Daytona. On the way to Daytona, Duff and I were talking, and then he just comes out and says, well, that was something about you, Mark. And I says, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I says, my guide, my reading was very normal. You'll get married, you'll have 2 kids, there'll be children of this world. Everything that lady predicted came true. Everything, even the electronic stuff that I wasn't even into yet, predicted that I would get into that career. And she was seeing things she didn't recognize, computers and stuff that didn't exist yet. So she was having a hard time explaining, I see you with these TVs with words on them and wires coming down. And I lived that. The day I saw that, I said, this is what she was talking about. I had built a structure with 8 computers all around me. The wires were dropping down, and I was inside of this group of computers and stuff running all these tests and everything. And I said, this is what she saw.
It struck you in that moment.
I can imagine to an old lady in the early 70s, this must have looked really strange. And so she said to Duff, after I had been in there, she says, your friend is going to be famous someday. He's going to make a great discovery. And so I said, I wonder why she didn't tell me that. That's kind of something big to leave out, don't you think? Yeah. And I thought about it, I says, I know why she didn't tell me, because I had to ask questions. I said, hell, that sounds good. I want to do that right now. And you're right. There's timing involved. I had to live through all these experiences. I had to grow towards it. I had to work my way and not do it right away. Things had to happen in order for this thing to happen with me. So it took 45 more years.
Which you wouldn't have liked to hear. You've been like, oh man, like that sounds like a really long time, especially to a young person, right? You're like, that's never
Well,
going to
yeah,
happen.
but that always stayed in my mind afterwards. So I thought, oh, that's something. I don't know. Every once in a while I try to invent something because, there was no specifics given. It was just that, raw thought that kind of steers your thinking. That's what it was designed to do, steer my thinking in the right direction, make sure I stayed on course, make sure I remember my life plan, because that's what we all have to do before we're born. We all agree to a life plan, and that I learned from another NDEer who was given a tour of the pre-birth process. So we learn that we're trained. We go to classes before we come down to earth because this place is really tough. It's one of the toughest places in the universe because in this place you can fail. Heroes often fail here, and they go down. They don't go down in history because they didn't make it for whatever reason, and there's a lot of life challenges here. So it's something to remember. You got to try to remember your life path. And that was a little guidance that I got. And then it goes on for through the years, I somehow wind up back seeing a psychic for this reason, troubled marriage, my first marriage. And then they let slip with another clue, another thing. The first 3 or 4 psychics that I talked to, the first thing they said to me, and this is different individuals. They say, in your final days, you will be a spiritual teacher. And I said, what? I'm not particularly religious or spiritual, but okay. It's really odd that they would all know that. There's obviously somebody telling them that first thing. So they want to get me, there's a little chunk of evidence there. And this next psychic that I talked to with my first wife, she said, yeah, there's something coming in your future, but it's not time yet. You don't have everything you need. So there's a confirmation of this discovery, invention, or whatever, and they talk about it again and just say, don't worry about it. Don't work on it now. You don't have everything you need. And it turns out the thing I needed was the internet. And I realized that as I wrote the book. I said, I could have never wrote this book without this thing, because I'm all over the world pulling documents from, libraries, where Newton's writings and Einstein's writings and Maxwell's writing. I couldn't have gotten that easily at Winter Haven Library. I mean, I had to, forget about it. The internet and the computer really made that all possible. And so, this lady said something that really proved that the afterlife is real. And that's, I needed that evidence to keep me on track. And what she said to me, and only I knew this, she says, your mother is here with you today. My mother had passed away a few years earlier, and she wants to send you a message. She says, I've been with you at night, sitting in the gold chair in your bedroom when you were praying and talking to me. I actually did that. And I would ask her to sit in the gold chair.
Wow.
And I would just have a conversation with her. Nobody knew that. No one, not even my wife. That lady could not have found that out any other way than my mother told her. So that's evidence for everyone out there. Know for sure your parents and loved ones do not die. They live on. And that's constantly a message that the NDEers are coming back. God is saying, tell everybody that we're real. Don't be afraid of dying, don't commit suicide, but we're real. We're here for you. And people don't die. And so that for me was incredible evidence.
I would have just started crying and not stopped for probably a long time. That's really powerful.
I probably got a little teary at that point because, that's just shockingly Correct.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, think about it. You're actually talking to your mother who's not here.
Right.
You know, they're over there. They're okay. They're all right. And they've heard you. They hear your prayers. They hear all your prayers. They hear all your thoughts. So, and I've had prayers answered, literally answered by my guardian angels. You know, that marriage eventually failed. And I went through a terrible divorce. It was bad for me. It was bad for my kids. It was bad for my wife. Nobody had a good time. It was miserable. And there were some points in that first 3 years that I thought I was going to lose my mind. I was so unhappy, so lonely. And I prayed to my guardian angels one night and I asked them for a sign, something, are you there? You know, I'm really suffering here. And they came to me that night. I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt this vibrating sound in my head. I kept my eyes closed, but I was awake now. And I could almost like see through them. I saw these pinkish orange orb-like shapes. They were kind of body shaped, moving around the room. And I was sleeping with this hand forward. And all of a sudden, I feel somebody squeeze my hand. This is after the prayer I prayed that very same night. And then I heard this sound, and I couldn't make it out. It was a metallic sound, like zing, zing, zing. And I said, I got to tune into this. I'm going to remain calm. They're trying to tell me something. And I felt the squeeze. Then I heard the zing, zing, zing. Then the third time they squeezed, and I heard the voice cleared up. It's just like I tuned the radio to the station, and suddenly I could hear what they were saying. They would squeeze my hand, and they said, did you feel that? And I squeezed again, and they said, did you feel that? I said, yes, I feel that. You know, I say it in my mind because I know they could hear my thoughts.
Yeah.
And they did that a few more times, and then it was over. So they answered my prayer. So there's more evidence.
Wow.
More evidence that there's an afterlife. And I had several more. The one incident in particular that was really amazing, that was pretty amazing, but
That's really amazing.
one happened actually before this one I just told you about, when I was still married. They saved my life. They saved me from being killed in a car accident. And in that particular instant, I heard a voice warning in my left ear as I was about to go left or right. I had a choice, and I wanted to go left, the quiet roads. And instead of listening to the voice, which spoke twice, I actually heard somebody say, don't go that way. I went that way because I couldn't believe, because my scientific mind says, oh, that couldn't be real. Even though I looked around, I thought there was somebody in the car. But I went that way because I was curious. So I said, look, it's going to be an accident maybe. So let's be prepared. Look ahead, be looking ahead, check both ways, don't go through any intersections. And sure enough, a truck started to swerve wildly up this 2-lane highway. And it was coming at me. And, you know, it was making other cars go off the road. He was driving like he was crazy. And then it was coming right at me. I turned hard, went off the road into a ditch, and we missed by that much.
Wow.
And I remember that slow motion scene as he was going by. And I was looking at him with my eyes wide open. And when I was sitting in that ditch, I said to myself, next time somebody says, don't go that way, don't go that way.
Yeah. When people say trust your gut, like trust your gut, but listen to the voices telling you to do things miraculously.
That's the only time I've ever heard that voice like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can hear the voice in your head like I was describing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But this was like, somebody was right next to my ear. And they don't do that unless circumstances are such that you're getting close to an exit point, a premature one.
Yeah.
And if it's not in your plan, they're going to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's the deal there. So those are some of the examples of the things that I've experienced that let me know the afterlife is for real. And these psychics, the good ones, are for real.
Yeah.
And we could get lots of help and information from the other world.
Yes.
It's all good news, in my opinion.
It's fantastic news. Everything you bring to us is fantastic news, actually. If everybody just listened to what you were talking about, both in physics and in spirituality, the whole world would be a fantastically better place, truly. I have a couple questions I just am wondering a bit randomly, and if you have any insight, you could let us know. One
Sure.
is, do you think, some people say there's a difference between the left ear and the right ear if you have buzzing or a sound or something like that is talking to you. Did you feel that way or have any insight into that?
Um,
It's
this
kind of random, but
buzzing sound is like, I don't know what it is. It's like a delta state or something. There are times when I wake up, it feels like one portion of the brain is still in a sleep state, one hemisphere, and the other is alert and awake. And, we're conversing and we're aware that we're awake and everything. So you're like that, but you can hear and see things that normally you could not, because
yeah.
you're kind of tuned like a radio, and you're able to, like I hear like old, sometimes I had a lot of these little where I'd wake up like that and I just lay still and I would feel energy going along my spine.
Hmm.
I would feel where I would hear like old baseball games, things from the 30s and stuff, just kind of all jammed into the background, like it was all happening at once.
Yeah.
And
I
I
had
was
that.
able to discern this thing or that, and I'm sure that they're helping that process, because I'm not like the gifted psychic that can turn it on and off and channel like that. They kind of allow that because I was just needing to the experience of knowing this is real. Don't feel like you're alone. They keep sending me messages. Don't give up. Keep going. It's going to be all right. Hang in there. And I guess that's evidence, and it's an important thing for everybody who's listening to realize. If you're suffering, you're not alone. You'll never be alone. They'll always be with you. Yeah, you might not be able to see them and hear them, but if you calm your mind and you pray, they'll hear you and they'll get a message to you,
Yeah.
and one way or the other. It's like that old saying, distant hands in foreign lands are turning hidden wheels, causing things to come about that no one seems to feel, all invisible from where we stand, yet the connections come to pass, all too hard to comprehend, they affect us nonetheless. From an old James Taylor song.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's what's happening to everybody. All 8 billion people in this world, there are no exceptions. Nobody's here all by themselves.
I love that. And I didn't know we'd gotten to 8 billion, but wow, you're absolutely right. Every single one is connected, and reaching out is something anybody can do at any point in time. To feel that connection more deeply. And do you think, we're talking about like these angels and guardians and allies are, helping you, especially in that moment where they're saying, don't go that way. Like there's a possible exit for you there and we don't want you to die yet. Do you think there's other forces that are darker that are hoping that you go that way and exit at that point? And do you have any experience with those or advice about them?
There are, I'm sure, darker entities. There's loads of work being done by people all over the world, exorcism and so forth. And that's always been a question: is why is there evil? Um, and I'm still asking that question somewhat. Uh, Interesting enough, I had a physicist who I was talking with who said the same thing I was thinking, and I got really excited when he said it, because he used the same thought pattern and words. He says evil is necessary part. That's why it exists. It was designed into the system. And I says, yeah, you know what? I think you're right.
You know,
I think you can't have a struggle without something to struggle against. So I'm thinking that there are evil entities by their own free will and choice.
yes.
It's not what God wants, and you don't want to mess with them. You don't want to go that route. You want to stay away from that. And I think sometimes during near-death experiences that are people who are atheists, they bump into those guys, and you don't want to mess with them. And usually they're pulled out of that situation if they pray to God, or they, just realize that there is an afterlife. First of all, an atheist has trouble dealing with that.
Yeah.
And the first few moments, hey, I'm not dead. There's my body over there, but I'm over here and I'm still not dead. I feel fine. And then they don't know where to go because they've been taught there is no God. So they're just standing around their body, and then maybe somebody else comes along. There's a near-deather guy that had that happen, and he went off with these people, and they were like demons, and they were torturing him. And then he finally heard a voice say to him, "Pray to God." I said, "I don't know how to pray to God." Pray to God.
Just do it.
And when he did, he made up a prayer. They left him, and then he saw the light and went to heaven and had the typical near-death experience.
Yeah. Well, I had a student tragically die, and we were really close, and she came to visit me in a dream afterwards, which is often where I have some of my experiences with people who have passed on and other types of experiences. And to me, it's not a dream, but I'm sure other people would think so, but it doesn't really matter. But anyways, I asked her, how was it to die? Like, how did it go? Curious.
Yeah.
And she said, well, once I got past the demons, it was really great. And I was like, that sounds rough. Like, that sounds bad. But, she was an atheist too. And it's interesting to think about it in that context. And Dakota had asked what your response would be to an atheist, in this sort of discussion about whether or not this exists or not. And I think you just kind of nailed it. And then I also want to share, and then you can share your response to all of that. But I have this idea about the free will part. Like you said, you can choose to be evil if you want. You can choose to go the dark route if you want. We all have free will. But also there is a purpose. And I just think of it in the same way that, maggots or whatever will eat like rotting flesh. And we'll go like, oh, God, that's so gross. But there's a purpose to it. Something has to do something with that, energy or decay or loss. And I feel like evil is similar. It's like eating what we are throwing away or wasting or something. And like there's a purpose somehow to it,
The whole bigger picture, I'm still investigating through NDEs, and I will continue studying and reading about that, because that's a question I kind of just want to really have a solid answer to and knowledge with and be comfortable about. Apparently, it's necessary for there to be an evil. And from what I've heard from a lot of psychics is there's actually a war going on the other side. And that is spilling into this world and is affecting how we're all acting and behaving here. And that's something I guess, everybody's going to have to choose a side. For me, I'm on God's team.
Yeah, I never understand how you could choose anything else. I'm like, have fun over there, weirdos.
Well, remember, the Bible says what's happening now is true. It's happening right now. It says, the good shall be called evil, and evil shall be called good.
That's definitely what's happening right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And they honestly, the followers honestly believe it. The good guys are evil, and the evil guys are good. They don't see it, what's happening. And this, they're just so lost in the materialism of this world that it's, I'm not saying they're bad people. It's just that they've been misguided, and it's a tough situation. And all I can do is my part to help a utopian society come about so that we don't have a cleansing. And that's also being talked about a lot as well. If the good guys don't win enough of the battles here, there'll be a big battle of some sort and a cleansing. They'll basically reset. And I'm trying to avoid that happening. So Team God, all the NDEers that are coming back, they're, the team is back. And, with help of Jesus and all these other people, I've had, through the psychic that I talked to now, this last one, which is prominent psychic in my life, who I've experienced, Tamara Richardson. It's amazing psychic. She channeled Einstein. I got to talk to Einstein.
Wow.
And how did I know it was him? Because through the 4 years I was writing this book, I'm talking to him in my head. He's my mentor, he's my hero. And I'm saying, is it anywhere did you say gravitation is a contraction of space? I looked and I looked and I finally found it in Amir Excel's book entitled God's Equation, where Einstein's happiest thought includes the words contraction and having to do with gravity. So when Tamara says, hey, this is unusual, this doesn't usually happen, but Albert Einstein here, he's working with you and he's doing this. Why is he doing this? I says, he's signaling to me. That's the question I had for him. Is gravity a contraction of space? So I says, doggone it, she's really talking to Einstein. Nobody else knew that. I never even bothered to talk out loud to that. Nobody I know is interested in physics. For her to guess something like that is eerily uncanny. And I said, oh, this is the real deal. This is really happening. And my conscious material mind is saying, this is beyond anything that I'm having trouble believing it. Even though I'm experiencing it, can this really be, Albert Einstein actually is aware of what I'm doing and it's helping me? That's just so beyond amazing. Yeah. And I don't talk about it that much because it is really hard to believe. But it's part of the experience. That's what's going to be in the next book, because it's time for all this to come out, because what is in my current book is the real deal.
Yeah.
And it needs to be known so that we can advance. And somehow, this is my task now. When I finish that book, I says, you know what? I'm done. That was 4 years of hard work. I don't think I want to write another book. And, I've done everything I needed to do, and that's that. And that's when I was pulled back in, and they got me to go to another psychic. I hadn't been to a psychic in over 20 years. And I was contented. I was happy, and I thought everything was fine. And then this all with the Einstein and all this came out and says, oh yeah, this is your main life plan. This is what you're sent to do. And so here we are. And
you have more work to do.
Yeah, that's what they said. He says, you're not done yet. I says, damn it.
God.
But I accepted the challenge, and I says, hey, well, I do believe and they've said in that channeling session, you agreed to this. This was your job. This is what you came to do. And, buck up and keep going. We'll help you as much as we can. But, okay, so it's a strange, unique situation that I find myself in, and I've tried to embrace it and keep the open mind and go forward and say, I don't want to die, get to heaven and say, hey, we told you it was real. We told you what to do, but you didn't listen. I don't want to have that happen. So I'm going to try to do my best, keep communicating, keep pushing this forward. Hopefully I could break through into the physics realm, and they'll recognize the math I did and the papers I've done. There's 2 papers now, actually explain gravity, inertia, and how mass are created. And then we can get talking about the anti-gravity field. There's other things I'm doing in that area as well.
Every time I talk to you, I always want you to connect with Foster Gamble and Nassim Haramein. And I don't know if you have tried that or not, but they're both phenomenal.
I better write that down because I get suggestions. Well,
I can email it to you too.
You email it too, and I will contact them this time.
Yay.
I've tried contacting physicists and stuff because I feel that, I got to try. I know they probably won't listen, but I got to try.
I think
I will try with who your suggestions are, and you never know.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, these meetings we're having right now, they're vitally important.
Yes.
I look at them as setting beacons out there, and you'll upload this. I don't know. Are you on Spotify at all?
No, but I'm on every other thing possible.
Okay. All right. So, you're on YouTube probably then.
YouTube, Rockfin, SoundCloud, every single podcast app that plays for anything, iTunes.
Well, this will
not
be
Spotify.
recorded. And, you know, the messages I've given will go out there, and I'm hoping people will listen, the special people, the right people. Connections are made, like you're suggesting here. I will look into that because that's really what I'm working toward right now, is making connections so that I can help humanity move forward. There's certain things that need to be done, and number one on the list is anti-gravity.
Yeah.
We got to get that going as soon as possible. I know the United States probably already has it secretly, but they're not sharing it with anybody. And there may come a time when we need en masse to move.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that I've learned about the Earth's core, about the sun's core. And I'm a little worried about the Earth's core because what I believe, and this is, I don't know if we talked about the Earth's core before.
I don't think we did.
Well, let's make the announcement.
Let's do
I
it.
believe that the Earth's core has a solid neutronium core. Neutronium is the same stuff that neutron stars are made out of. And what I've discovered is black holes are just super dense neutron stars. And there's evidence out there that's been ignored. Every time a sun blows up, you know what's left? A neutron star. All I'm saying is the explosion didn't create the neutron star. It was already there. It was there. That's how gases are collected. You need a strong gravitational source to gather the gas, the hydrogen, and then crush it into helium through the fusion process, and the star is born.
That makes sense.
Those gases won't come together without a strong gravitational force. And if we looked at the sun, as we have done with a measurement called the tackle line measurement, we noticed that the sun is spinning, the gases are spinning on the outside, but as you get closer and closer to the middle of the sun, it's spinning as if there's a solid in there. It's not as if there's a solid, there is a solid in there. That's why the graphs are showing that. But of course they won't, oh no, that's just some really dense gas. Hell, it's a solid core. That's what formed the star in the first place. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess it's more fortunately, I believe planets are formed in the same way by smaller, rapidly rotating neutronium spheres that gathered gases, made all the elements right here on Earth. How else did they get here? Did they just randomly accumulate from outer space? We have all the elements in the periodic table on Earth. I think we made them right here in the core of their planet. And over billions of years, the system through magma moving it to the surface and dispersing it and the plate tectonics, we got a very active core. And hopefully it's stable enough that this planet doesn't come unhinged at some point. But if it does, we're going to have to leave. Or if it gets too hot, we're going to have to leave. Or if there's a great plague, we're going to have to leave. And the only way to do that is to have a anti-gravity propulsion system, the slipwave spatial bias drive. We need to have that in production. You know, people like Samsung and Hitachi, everybody needs to be making this thing so that we can all leave en masse if we have to. And as long as we don't have that, we're in danger.
And tell us again about that slipwave drive and why it works and how it works. This is the thing, you know, when you, again, we'll go back and just mention, when I'm reading this, you're describing it, or even when you came on the last show and you're sharing it, all of it, I'm like, of course. Of course. Like you said, it's so simple, actually, that you're like, that's so obvious, actually. Like, why has it taken this long to have it figured out? And I know there's that scientific axiom that, you know, it even has the word X in it, right? I can't think of it right now, but it's that the simplest explanation is usually what's true.
Yeah.
What is that called? You know what I'm talking about, though.
There's that Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. There we go. It's because I said axiom and then tried to say Occam. My brain was like, you can't do that. But yes, Occam's razor. Everything you describe is Occam's razor. It's as clear as can be.
Einstein called it also the principle of least action. Things aren't going to go out of their way to happen. They're going to, you know, a photon's going to go a straight path because that's the least action. It's not going to change directions. It requires a force to change directions. Unless space is bent, as it is in a gravitational field, if space is contracted down, So will the photon is using the principle of least action is just going where the bent space is. It's still going in a straight line as far as it's concerned. It's just curved. So it follows the line of space, the continuous portion of space of the medium itself. So the slip wave is really a discovery I made again about the photon, because the photon is like really a central player in our reality. It's the communications particle. It's so that we can see their stars. If there weren't photons, the sky would be, everything would be black and we wouldn't have sight.
Yeah.
We'd have to do some other sense that does the same thing, but it's not visual. And so photons do something that physicists don't understand. All the particles do. They have self-caused motion. And if you ask them about it, they get very defensive. And they usually take a deep breath and say, oh, that's a fundamental question. And we just assume that things have momentum. But where did it come from? How do you get momentum? Why does a photon move at the speed of light constantly? It never slows down. We can't do that. We can't build a rocket that goes that fast. So all the slip wave is particles. I got the idea from particles, and like the guys that discovered flight, they got the idea from watching nature, birds flying the wings. They studied Da Vinci, the Wright brothers. They just studied the birds, and then they invented the plane. I studied the particle to determine how it moves, and I discovered that particles are really like vortex shape, and that's an old idea that was abandoned. It shouldn't have been. But I said, well, I looked at a particle that we can see, which is a bubble in water, and I studied how it moved up, and I realized that it was pressure underneath. Pressure at the bottom of the ocean is higher than it is at the top. So the less dense bubble moves up, it's being pushed up from the pressure underneath. It always does. Always. It doesn't ever go down. Bubbles always rise. And that's why. Pressure. And I realized, well, pressure is the key. Look for a pressure gradient inside of the particle, because it can't be outside of the particle. It doesn't make sense. In the ocean, it's outside of the particle. It's not a perfect example, but inside the particle, the pressure gradient has to be. And I realized that twisted particles are twists and rotations. And as you twist something, if you take a silly putty and you put it down on a comic book and you look at the picture and you twist it, you'll see it stretches. Well, twisting causes space to stretch. That decreases the density from the front to the back of the particle. This creates a pressure gradient. So at the back of the particle, it's expanded, the space is expanded, and it's pushing out. It's pushing out from the back forward, because that's the greatest expansion in this area. So like, imagine if you're standing up in front of a wall and you push. Which way do you go? You go the opposite direction of where you're pushing. Same thing the particle does. Exactly the same method of motion. You know, Newton says that, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. He was right. That's all I'm saying. He was right. And that's how it works. It's just that simple. So you have to get space to expand. So the slip wave is, I do this by using magnetic fields. Why magnetic fields? Because as a kid, connecting the dots, linking the observations, I noticed that in the reports coming from books, Project Blue Book and so forth, the Air Force was bringing magnometers. What are magnometers? Magnometers are devices that measure magnetic fields. The Air Force obviously knows something if they're bringing magnometers to UFO landing sites. And they're measuring the ground, they're measuring the trees. And they found in some cases that the ground, the grass was magnetized. This takes a really strong field to do that. So that stuck in my head for years. And I said, what does magnetism have to do with anti-gravity? So finally, after 40-something years, I figured it out. Magnetism is a rotation of space. So it's a stretching of space. So the stronger the field, the more it rotates, the more it stretches. That causes an expansion So there's a metric transformation going on. That's a little technical, but space literally is spreading apart. And when it does that, it forms a bubble-like situation, and that gives it its structure, causes its motion. And there is no other reasonable explanation that I could come up with. It makes sense. It's using classical physics. What's left to do but come up with one more equation, which I'm working on now. And I found out that Einstein was working on it. In his unified field theory. I says, I wonder if anybody's ever thought of doing this equation. And sure enough, in the unified field theory of gravitational electricity, July 25th, 1925, he writes in the last two sentences this: nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derive. The reason for that is I did not succeed in deriving equations of motion for particles yet. He had the same damn idea.
Wow.
All these years. He was working on it, and nobody even dared to even think about it because they use kinematics. Kinematics is using the motion of particles without consideration for their cause of motion. All of physics is based on that. Basically, says they move and we don't know how, and we don't care.
This is what reminds me of Nassim Haramein, and he's got this whole foundation now. He does what he calls Resonance Foundation, and he wants people with new ideas to come and share. And so I would love for you to get connected with that.
Just send me the links this time. I'm going to write the guy. I'll write up a nice letter.
I'm going to remember. Any of you out there can message me in Telegram and remind me to tell Mark about Nassim Haramein and Foster Gamble. But he says he had a similar sort of thing where he was watching this expansion of the universe in a textbook. He was learning about it, and he was kind of young, and they were showing it by showing a guy blowing into like a balloon, right?
Balloon.
And he said, okay, but who's the guy? And they were like, oh no, that's just for explaining. And he's like, yeah, but if it's expanding, there's something expanding it. What's expanding it? And they're like, no, we're just using this as an example. And he's like, okay, but if what you're saying is it expanding because of like some sort of force, like what's the force? And they're like, no, just like forget about that. And that's like what you're describing. You're like, okay, but what's making them move? Why are they moving? Like what is happening here? And it seems to me like this is what's so crazy sometimes is people can get so attached, so entrenched. Here's the way we're going. This is the truth. But this simple thing, this one question, they're like, no, we just ignore that. It just doesn't fit with what we're doing. So we just ignore that. And this is probably why Einstein works with you, because you are redemption, right? You're like the finishing of his goal.
Well, I named the theory to honor his memory, super relativity.
I love that.
I have the greatest admiration and love for Albert Einstein, as well as Hendrik Antoon Lorentz, James Clerk Maxwell, Michael Faraday, and Newton. I stand on their shoulders, and I thank them for their contributions, because all of them put together, they left enough clues for me to work out this final bits so that we can proceed forward. And I just can't say enough good things about the big five there. And there was others too that I've read about too, but those are the main guys that I got most of the ideas from. They basically believe the same things except for Faraday. Faraday thought there was individual fields, kind of like we believe now. But he was alone in that philosophy. Everybody else kind of pretty much went with the ether theory, the solid, quasi-elastic solid that I believe is the actual correct theory.
Yeah.
And it's a long road that I still have to travel. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, honestly. I mean, I'm doing these shows that, as many as I can do. And somehow, maybe through a connection like you're suggesting, maybe somebody will say, hey, let's work together, or let's work on this. I got I'm setting up a lab. I'm going to do an experiment. I won't give too much details about that. But if that experiment works out, then I have another road, an avenue that I can travel that's going to get some serious attention. I've tried to get people to do this experiment, but everybody's got their own
thing they're doing.
Some people try, but you got to do it right, and it's not easy to do. But I think I've found a way to do it. I will just kind of hire people to build the pieces, and then I will assemble it and test it out. But I'm just trying to remember what it is I came to do. And, you just do stuff like this, and hopefully somehow I make the connections and things move forward.
Hey, that's what's worked out for you so far, and you've made it pretty far. So
Yeah.
we're all praying for your success and protection, because we know there's some people who maybe don't want you to succeed, and so we'll all pray for that right now. If you're a prayer, or a visualizer, intender, whatever you are out there, we'll just send Mark some good thoughts and prayers.
Are very welcome. That they're very helpful, and they are all heard. So yeah, definitely do that. I'm not asking for money or anything. Just prayers.
No. Yeah. And definitely I'm serious. Like, I don't buy the book of every person who comes on my show, not even most of them. So I bought your book because I was so fascinated by all the things you share, and I was not in any way disappointed. I want everyone to go get it. But I also wanted to point out, one of my favorite thinkers is Richard Feynman, and I think you mentioned him, maybe, or Feynman. And he said, if you cannot explain what your theory or your idea or this scientific aspect or whatever to a toddler or like a 3-year-old or a young child, for them to be able to understand what you're talking about, you don't understand what you're talking about. And this is exactly what you do. You just did it for all of us, right? With the bubble and the thing and all this stuff. And these are really advanced concepts, but you're like, here's what it is. And all of us went, yeah, that sounds cool. Really, yeah, I get it.
Feynman might have said that, but originally the person that said that was Einstein. If you can't explain it to your grandmother, then it's not worth it.
I love that. I did not know that.
Feynman said some really good stuff. He said something to Lee Smolin once. He wrote a good book that I read, Wrong with Quantum Mechanics, basically. He said approximately, if all your colleagues have tried to demonstrate that something's true and failed, it might be because that thing is not true. So he's really kind of talking about string theory and maybe quantum mechanics there.
Yeah.
There's some issues there, and he realized that, but he was also the guy that said, shut up and calculate. If his students were asking him too many fundamental questions, stop, don't think that way, and yeah, he's an amazing guy. I like Feynman. He had a lot of great quotes. The extreme weakness of quantum gravitational effects now poses some philosophical problems. Maybe nature is trying to tell us something new here. Maybe we should not try to quantize gravity. He is right about that. I didn't quantize it. Gravity was never about a particle-to-particle interaction. That's what quantizing gravity is all about. The mysterious graviton, which was never discovered. And gravity is about a particle-to-space interaction, not a particle-to-particle. So I'm agreeing with him right there. I'm saying, you're right. Don't quantize it. It's not about that. So yeah, Feynman's a good guy. I like him. God rest his soul.
Yes, he didn't end up on all the right notes, but he got some of them.
Yeah, well, he did some great work. I'm certainly in the field of quantum mechanics. That's some heavy math. Certainly beyond me, but I don't need to learn something that's the wrong model. I'm not going to waste a lot of time trying to explain a model that's incorrect.
Yeah.
There's just no such thing as a force of probabilities, and that's what would be required in order to make quantum mechanics sensible. There would have to be probabilities itself would have to be the cause of things, and that's just not the way it is.
Is that what Einstein meant when he said God doesn't play dice?
Yeah. Basically, it's just not, things are not just random. If you take a roll of the dice, you get the numbers, the result based on the force you threw them at, the spin that you applied, the air currents, the angle at which they hit the floor or whatever you're throwing them onto. All these things compute and calculate the starting position when you release them are the cause of the numbers for each roll. Now, what happens is if you roll them a million times, you can do statistical averaging, probabilities, and you get a number that's right. And they misinterpret that to mean that that's how the reality works. It's just random throws of the dice. So yeah, Einstein and Bohr went at it for years, arguing back and forth about, quantum mechanics, and it's not a complete theory, and it's really not. I think more and more physicists today are coming to that conclusion.
It's really interesting too. There's been this theme in some of the Rogue Ways episodes recently, and Mark Malone brought us this idea that Luciferianism is really at its core the worship of oneself as God, as opposed to the worship of God as God, and seeing something outside of yourself as greater than yourself, and having created all of this and set it in motion. And when you're talking about the difference between quantum mechanics and what is it? Newtonian mechanics is what I would call it.
Yeah, Newtonian mechanics,
Okay.
or classical field theory.
Classical field theory. Then I'm starting to see a similarity in that quantum mechanics could lead you more towards the Luciferian sort of way, and the classic model could lead you more towards the, understanding a creator and God and the rule and the laws put in place by the creator. So that's really interesting. That do you feel like there might be something to that?
Yeah. I'm
not saying that quantum mechanic people are Luciferian. I'm just saying, like, there might be a road you would go down.
Many of them tend not to be. Many of them tend to be either agnostic or atheist. Obviously, they all aren't. I'm aware of that.
Right.
But a great many of them are, and this thing kind of leads you into that realm. And this is very popular now. This secularism and all of this
materialist.
I don't believe in anything I can't touch, see, feel, or influence.
And if I feel it and think about it and experience it, but in a way that I can't understand, I'm also going to deny that. Like,
it's a great bit of denial, and it's keeping us kind of with our heads stuck in the sand or running down the rabbit hole away from truth and away from reality. We really need, I can't stress this enough, just to get back to what the truth is. I'm not pushing any particular religion. I'm just saying we all need, and what God wants from all the NDEs that I've heard is he just wants to have a personal relationship with everyone. Yeah. And you could choose any religion you want to do that. It could be Jewish or Christian, Baptist, you could be Muslim or Hindu, or there's many roads to God. And we need to get back to, because that's the truth. That's what's really going on here. We're all interconnected, and we all come from the same place. So it's a matter of getting out of our identities and the individual, little boxes, labels that we put on ourselves, and realizing we're all connected. We're all coming from the same place. And when we die, we're just that spirit again. We're not a particular race. We may not even be really humans. I think that there are a lot of us here that are from other planets that are here to help trying to fix this thing. It said that I'm one of them. Okay, maybe I don't remember, but my mind is open to that. All I know is I got a task to do. And I just, religion is a tough subject, but I think we should stop fighting about it. Where religion has given us a problem is in the misinterpretations. That's what gets everybody feuding, and there's no need to feud anymore. It's just need to accept, as long as your religion isn't telling you to harm or hurt any people, there's nothing like that coming from God. If your leader in your religion says kill the people who don't believe in you, in our religion, that's not a religion from God. That's a man-based misinterpretation. So we just got to practice love. It's just that simple. Again, the solution has never really been that hard.
Yeah. No, it never has been. Well, I love all of it so much. It's been so fun to have you back again. I do want you to share with people your book and the books that are coming and where they can go to find more from you, get the book, or interact if they want to, or anything else you want to share and invite them to.
Okay, well, my website is www.super-relativity.com. super-relativity.com. I got links, buttons on the first page that go to my site where I have my papers written. I have a blog there. I have some videos you can watch from past shows. What else do I got? Oh, links to buy the book either from the website or from Amazon. Pretty much everything you need to find out about super relativity and what's going on with me right now. Then, of course, my Facebook page, you can friend me. I still have some openings there. They're going fast.
Good. That's awesome.
Come join in, and I try to make updates like I did for this show, put it on there, post it, and what else? Oh, and I have a YouTube.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
I'm thinking of getting into Twitter, but I haven't really tried that yet. I don't know how that works. I'm gonna have to study that.
I just went in and started tweeting, and I still don't really know what I'm doing. Like 4 years later, however long I've had this thing.
Find your tweet. That's what I can't figure out. I mean, I say something. Who's gonna hear it?
Yeah, you could go follow people and hope they follow you back, and then they might, and then even if they do, they'll never see it because they follow 10,000 other people, and there's tweets everywhere.
But it takes a lot of time keeping up a website and Facebook, and I can only do so many things.
And you're doing important work outside of that and writing more books. So yeah, we can understand that. Well, and those links are right below, no matter where you're watching, no matter where you're listening. You can just click over and check out Mark's stuff. I got the book directly from you, and I think you put a little nice note in it. So that was fun. And then those other books, what are you expecting on the timeline with those?
Well, a timeline is exactly what I got going. Finishing my next PowerPoint, which is going to be snazzy. Then I'm going to present at this conference. Cool. And that should be done in a week or two. Then I'm going to start the lab work and see what it's going to take to build this device. I'm not sure how long that could be, a few weeks, a few months, hopefully not longer than that. And then when that's done, if it's successful, then the future is somewhat unclear at that point, because then I'm going to have to promote, and I have to be careful how I promote this thing, because there are, like you said earlier, there are people that are not going to want this knowledge to become available. So I have to figure out a way around that so that I could safely disseminate the information, and I got to decide whether I'm going to bother to patent it or not. I don't know. I will just pray on it and see if I can get some guidance there.
Yeah.
But no sense worrying about that until I see if it works or not. But that's what and after that, then somewhere in the next book will come. But I've been told now I'm not done yet, so it's kind of premature to write my memoirs there. And while I'm still in the act of making them. So,
yeah, you got a lot left.
I can take it to a certain point, but I don't know when that book will come out, because I still got significant things to do.
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm very excited about this experiment and to see how it goes. And you've been protected and guided this far, so I have faith that will continue for you. So what are your final thoughts that you want to leave people with?
Well, I guess, like I said earlier, I'm just trying to help the physicists of this time with their outdated philosophy, and hopefully get them to realize that there is a proper path, and that path was the Einstein path, and hopefully to get us back there and get a grip on reality. The truth for most people that live in the material world is like an elixir that has a bittersweet taste. The ego prevents many people from accepting the truth. That's the bitterness. But intuitively, when one hears the truth, it also leaves a sweet aftertaste. The more they drink of the elixir of truth, the sweeter the taste. So I'd like to leave you with that thought, and hopefully you will drink of my elixir, and we will move forward in a positive direction and help create a utopian society where everybody can be safe and peaceful and have truth and knowledge.
Well said. Beautiful words. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric, a dose of wisdom according to the far-seeing Mark Fiorentino. Mark, thank you so much for coming back and sharing with us tonight.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it.
Well, telepathy, teleportation, psychic phenomenon, strange encounters that can't be easily explained via materialist science. None of this is truly extrasensory or extra-dimensional. It is all happening right here, right now, and every single one of us is a part of it, woven into the very fabric of everything that exists as an integral piece. Every single one of us is capable of sensing and interacting with the subtle forces and energies at work in this realm. There isn't an aspect of life or the universe we are not intimately connected with, and there isn't a micromolecule of it that we can't come to understand. Let the mind of God be one with your mind. Let the knowledge of yourself as a beautiful piece of a cosmic symphony come to the surface, and until you see yourself as both the cloth and the weaver, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Mind is elusive, time is exclusive, round trip all inclusive, the island is abusive. Jekyll's wearing hides in plain sight lines, heckle devils blind by strange slight lines. Light designed as their own resource, if they control the narrative there's no recourse. Prophecies diseased by a strong overreach, time ain't a seed that sits idly by well preached. Watching bodies wither as they slither like a scaled river on a land of which they don't own a sliver. Fatal error and avoidance, symbiosis, lack of focus. To understand balance from the rover to the lotus, from light to the dopest, gifted through osmosis. Luminance went out a while ago, they didn't notice. Masturbating currency, squatting in the dark chamber, disconnected from Akasha, watching dissipate the vapors.
You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? Now they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone. Let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life too. I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
Do it to your own kind.
What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.